Do apologize. There we go. Hi, Amy. How are you?
I am so good. I'm so sorry. I was in for the entire previous session and my computer shut off seconds before
Oh,
my turn, of course.
no. Well, we're glad that you're with us now.
I
Um,
am.
yeah. So thank you for joining us. I'd love to introduce Amy. Amy is a former high school maths teacher turned full-time cake pop bakery entrepreneur. Her cake pop business, Daisy Pops, named after her daughter Daisy, was always supposed to be a side hustle, but then COVID hit and simultaneously took away the relational parts of teaching she loved the most, and made individually wrapped cake pops very popular. Amy takes innovation in the cake pop world to the next level and is always looking for ways to make their pop process more efficient and more consistent, which is where 3D printing came into play within her business. So at the start of COVID, Daisy Pops began selling make your own cake pops kits to give parents an activity to do with their kids at home, with the bonus of a sweet treat at the end. So the kit included a 3D printed cake pop stand, and Amy's 3D printer was going constantly for a few months just to keep up with the demand. So now Daisy Pops uses their 3D printer to make cake pop cutters, stands, and dough portioners, and even the bases for the massive cake pop wedding cakes. So, Amy, I'll hand over to you.
Great. Thank you. Let me share my slideshow here. All right. Can everybody see that okay? Yes. All right. Great. Well, I forgot that I wrote that long introduction, so I feel like I stole my entire presentation from myself now. But yeah, so my name is Amy, right? My company is Daisy Pops, as Trisha already said. And when you think of a cake pop, what do you think of immediately? You can go ahead and type it in the chat. Like, where have you all probably gotten your cake pops? Yes. Thank you, Carol. All right. I'm sure Carol's not the only one in here that is saying probably Starbucks. Yeah, kids' birthday parties for sure. All right. And so the first question is, what's a cake pop? So you can see on the cake pop on the left there, that's the Starbucks ones. So what we try to do with our cake pops is we try to make them a little higher class, of course, so they taste good. Not only do they taste good, but they also look good. And so you can see that our cake pops are actually a disc shape instead of the circle, and part of that is of our ability to 3D print. All right, next slide. All right, so just a quick introduction, even though you heard about me already from Trish. I'm Amy Mucha. This is my family right here, my husband and three kids, Peter, Charlie, and Daisy, the company's namesake. We live in Kent, Ohio, where I grew up, so right back where I started. And as you guys already know, I was actually a former math teacher. So I went to college to be a math teacher, was a math teacher happily for 12 years. Loved it. In fact, in that picture, you can't see it, but I'm wearing math Toms. So it had all kinds of like equations on it. Loved teaching. Yeah, I can, yes, let me try to put it in presenter mode. All right, is that better? Yes. Okay, great. It is. Thank you for the question. All right. So as we said, teaching for 12 years. Really enjoyed it. And then on the side, I started making cake pops. And so, making them, trying to figure out putting them in like styrofoam to dry at the very beginning. And so my husband, with his design business, he had a 3D printer. And he was like, hey, he's like, I think I could probably find a design for a cake pop stand. online. I was like, oh, okay, like that'd be great. So you can see on the left here, our original cake pop stand that we made. He just found it on Thingiverse, printed it out. I was like, oh, this is the best, so much better than styrofoam. Well, you can see that not only did our stands improve, but our cake pops improved as well. So looking over here now, this is the kind of stand that we use to dry our cake pops in. You can also see the cute little taco pops as well that we make often. And so it was just, 3D printing our cake pop stands, and my husband was just printing them at his office. And then COVID hit. So as you already heard, COVID made the math teaching not what I loved. I loved the relational side of it. I loved connecting with my students, and that was not there currently. And I knew it was coming back, but at the same time, it also made cake pops pretty popular. And a big part of that was because of these make your own cake pop kits. What my school does is they do something called M term, which M term or J term, January or March term, where students can choose to either go on a fun trip, do like a career experience, or take a class with a teacher. And I was like, oh, like I'm gonna teach them how to make your own cake pops. Well, granted, it was supposed to happen in March of 2020, and I think we all know that that did not happen. In fact. And I was trying to think of a way, how could I still give my students that experience of making their own cake pops? I was like, well, I'll like put together some kind of a kit that, people can do at home. And then my students don't, lose their money that they had. So I started making these kits, including the stands, gave them to my students. And then I was like, people are stuck at home. Parents are stuck with their kids, and nothing for them to do. So why don't we go ahead and start having people buy these. And so we were selling the kits. The cake pop stand comes for free with the kit. Um, and the 3D printer was just like printing 24/7 because people were just like, oh, like these are so great, let's do this. So that's really when the 3D printer moved from my husband's office into our house where the cake pop bakery is still located. So we're still a home bakery for now. Right. And so, just stands were good enough. I was like, oh, the 3D printer is worth it simply just for that. But then as I, fast forward to May of 2021, I went back and I taught math that year from 2020 to 21. And then it became apparent that it was time to retire because the cake pops were just so demanding. So a good problem to have. But once I got into like full-time cake popping, I was like, oh, like there are so many things that could be more efficient. And I have I have a team with me of about like 16 or so other cake poppers. And so trying to be like efficient and consistent are always my goals. So what we used to do is we used to scoop out our dough with a cookie cutter. And FYI, cake pop dough, people always ask, like, are these baked all the way? Yes, they are. We bake a cake, we put it in our food processor with a little bit of frosting, and it becomes like Play-Doh. So instead of scooping out, like scoop after scoop after scoop, like rolling them into balls, which was actually killing my shoulders. I'm like, oh my gosh, this should not be, a physical assertion, to be making cake pops. I started thinking, well, I have this 3D printing tool, so there should be a way to, make this a little easier for us. So first thing we did is we designed this little dough portioner. So in this outer frame, you would just put a whole cake worth of dough. You'd push down that middle part, and it would split it up into 49 fairly equal pieces, as you can see right here. And that was great. But then I was like, well, actually, it would be nicer if we could just figure out the volume of cake pops um, and actually 3D print the exact size that we needed. So this square right here is actually our portioner that we still use very often. So we roll it out. If you can see that rolling pin at the back, it's set to be the exact right depth. So you can imagine me and my math glory just like doing the volume and area calculations to try to do this. So we roll it out to the exact depth. And then this portioner, each little square you see in there gives us exactly one cake pop. So this made everything so much more consistent for us and also so much quicker because we could just, do 12 at a time doing it that way. And then we were getting some. We got an edible printer during COVID. Thought it was a splurge I would never use. But in fact, we use it all the time. So we needed to find a way how to make logo cake pops, is what we call them. So like clearly they're not going to work on a sphere. So we're like, well, maybe we should try to figure out to how to make them discs so that the logo, the little wafer paper that's printed, could fit right on the disc. And so we printed this circle 3D, we 3D printed this circle cookie cutter, and you can see we just stamp it out just like you're cutting out cookies. And it was excellent, quite revolutionary that we could just like stamp it out and we would have the right shape. Soon we started getting a little smarter too. We're like, well, if we can cut out squares, if we can cut out circles, then we can make any kind of cookie cutter shape. Like they have them out there. And so I started, like buying some cookie cutters, little mini cookie cutters online, but they were never the exact size, the right size. I'm like, oh, like it's not the right area. So some people are getting smaller cake pops than others, which is not fair. You don't want to be the one getting a small cake pop. So yet again, we did the math. We figured out the area of our circle and our square cutters, made them the same, and now we can design any other shapes that we want and make it the same area again, thanks to 3D printers. So you can see these cute little bunny cake pops. And I remember years ago when I was first making bunnies, I would like make a ball and then put like candy corn, I think, in the ears. But this is just such a more beautiful solution and so much easier. So we really set ourselves apart from other cake pop bakeries by the fact that we can do other shapes. As you can see, which has been great. People always comment on that. So my goal is always to be as different from Starbucks cake pops as possible. So this is allowing us to do that. So in addition to our 3D printed cake pop stands and our like cake dough cookie cutters and portioners, something else that is big in the thank you, I appreciate it. Something else that's big in the cake pop world is when people want wedding cakes, but they don't actually want wedding cakes. Like they want cake pops. Like how do you put cake pops into the form of wedding cakes? So what people usually do is they just get like the styrofoam cake bases, they cover it in fondant, and then they, like put cake balls onto it like with toothpicks. And I was like, man, like that is so much work. And we tried to do it once. I was like, this is just not consistent. Like the cake balls weren't all perfectly lined up. And so again, I brought my husband in on this project. I was like, all right, like how can we do this? And so what we started off with, this was our prototype, our first prototype here for cake pop cakes. So you can see we printed like 3 little cake layers. And we actually had like, instead of toothpicks, we had like little, like plastic spokes coming out. So it looked kind of like a wheel. And then what we did, exactly, it is reusable, which was huge for us because going through that styrofoam and that fondant every single time was going to make these so expensive that nobody could even afford them. So you can see it worked great. We, like put little cake balls onto these spokes. Looked beautiful. However, in conversations with other cake poppers and also me, like I would much rather have a cake pop on a stick than just a cake bite. And so I was like, like there's probably a way to like put a cake pop stick into, like a circular ring like this. And so, in fact, my husband, again, we worked on this, prototyped it together. And let me show you our prototype number 2. Okay. So this was what our next one was. So you can see instead of having spokes coming out, we inverted the design. So now there are actually holes going through. And so we can actually stick our cake pops through these rings, which is great because when people actually like when they're at a wedding, they're pulling this out, they can actually pull out an entire cake pop from the cake and then you carry it around by the stick, eat it. And so it's just much nicer. I think it's easier for me, easier for the party attenders as well. So this was our next prototype. The top is not 3D printed yet. That's my next goal, and I want it to be like interlocking too, so like we can put the different layers together so they stick together. But that's next time, next year. I can be talking about how we did that. And then is ready for the grand reveal of what our cake pop cakes look like now, thanks to 3D printing. Okay, everybody do drum roll, on your desks, something like that. All right, and so this, thank you for the emojis. And so this is what we can do now with our cake pop cakes. Again, because of 3D printing, what it allows us to do. So these stands are totally reusable. People just, essentially like rent them from us and then give them back. But we can make massive cake pop stands just like this. Yeah, and it looks beautiful. And we make them white, of course, using the white filament. So you can't really even notice that it's not styrofoam. And even on the top, we collaborated in the picture on the left, we collaborated with another local baker. So we don't actually do cakes. But somebody still wanted to like cut into the cake like you do. And so we had her on the very top of our 3D printed, cake base. She made a cake and like adhered it right on top of there so that they could still cut their cake, but then everybody else could have the cake pops to pull off of it. So it's just been fun to see. And I remember, a couple years ago, like when I was like, okay, like full-time cake popping, like ready to really get into it, I would see photos like this and think, how did they do this? How, like just how? And now it's just a really, proud moment to look at these and think, as a team, with my husband helping me, we made this. And the best part of that one on the right is all those balls are actually styrofoam balls. So we can just keep using it again and again and again for the wedding shows that we do. All right, so that is the presentation on truly how 3D printing has revolutionized our cake popping, and other people now, other cake poppers are still, trying to like there's kind of like seeing like, oh, like she does this. So I've already had people say, hey, like you inspired me. I reached out to a friend that does 3D printing. And they are now, they're printing me little cake cutters and, cake stands, which I love to hear.
I have one question for you as someone that's getting married soon. Do you ship to Australia?
I knew that was coming. um, we could do a test run, perhaps. We only ship in the United States right now, but maybe if I have a reason to figure out if we can do that,
Well,
maybe we can work it out.
I'll take this offline. All right.
Okay,
So we do have some questions for you
great.
through the Q&A. So are you using any special materials for printing items that are reusable for food contact, or do you print new ones from time to time?
We just use regular PLA because most of the time it's not in contact with the cake pop dough for very long, and that was another reason too why we switched our cake prototypes, because we were like, we don't really want the plastic like in the cake pops. That's why we really like the cake pop sticks, going into the plastic. So oftentimes we can just keep reusing them, but then sometimes if we do see like, oh, it's we can see that it's getting used, then we will just reprint it and use a new one.
And another question, what's the most complex shape you have had the opportunity to make for your cake pops?
Sure. And first off, we call them popportunities around here. So
Opportunities.
yes, popportunities. A complex shape. I feel like the bunny one was actually one of the tougher ones because our cake pop dough, it's not super thick. Like it's thicker than cookie dough, but I think what our rolling pin is set at is like 3/8 of an inch or so. So trying to get those ears out, one of my coworkers, she was trying to do it, like punching it out. So what I really need is to figure out how to, have a press so that I can just like press it out in the shape of a bunny ears. But that's truly one of the most complicated shapes that we've done. Oh, and thank you, Shayla, for that article on food safety.
Cool. And just another question. chemistry modules. Carol McDonald is asking, would you create a kit for high school teachers?
I love that idea. When you started talking about that, I was like, oh my gosh, yes. That is something I would totally look into. So if you want to reach out after this and like actually you can be my test subject, see how it goes. But I think that would be so, so fun. We could do like different colors, and oh, great idea. I'm a little ashamed. I mean, I guess I just think in math, not in chemistry. But genius idea. Love it.
Yeah, yeah. And Nita's saying, make serotonin and dopamine, and Leanne's mentioning, yay. So there's a lot of people excited about the possibilities for you. So yeah, is there anything else that yeah, yes, dopamine. Is there anything else that you'd care to share with us today?
I think that's really about it. You can see all of our information on here. One of the big things too, and as I already mentioned, I taught high school math, and I just on social media, posted like, hey, I'm gonna be speaking at a 3D printing conference. Like make that number one on the list of things I never thought I would be doing. And one of my former students, who's now teaching at my high school that I taught at, and he's like, hey, like we actually we work with our juniors in the engineering program on like 3D printing. It's like we would really love, if you could come in, speak to them about how you incorporate 3D printing into your business. And also like you can give us like projects. I was like, oh, yes, that would be great to bring the high schoolers in and give them projects and something to do, because we always try to make our cake pops educational somehow. So we go into a lot of schools, we teach them how to make cake pops, and I always try to work some math in, like do fractions, like if you have some dough and you need to split it into 6, like what's the best way to do that. So yeah, we just love the educational aspect of it, whether it's chemistry, or math, or 3D printing and engineering.
Excellent. Yeah, I just love the concept, and I love the way that you've tied it into education and maths
Mhm.
and applying it to real time scenario or real life scenario. So, yeah, yeah, I probably would have done better in maths if that had been the case. If I had
Right,
have
right,
had
exactly. Yes, yeah.
opportunities.
Yeah. I mean, I did use cake pops to like bribe my students. That's really how it started taking off, and my former students still talk about it.
Excellent. That's awesome. Cool. So I guess we're running a little bit before schedule now. So if no one else has any more questions, oh, hang on, there is another
Yeah, I see that.
question. Okay. So could you use edible material for the sticks, for making the sticks?
I had never even thought about that option. I mean, here are the sticks right here, just like paper rolled tightly. Your basic lollipop sticks. But that's something that I have not thought of and need to
Ah,
think about, I guess.
yeah.
Wow,
I wonder if
fascinating.
there's opportunity there. So
Great. Yes.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Yeah, oh, there's another comment. You could also make a double helix stand similar to the cake pop cakes to make DNA.
Yes, there we go. Look at all of these. All right, nerdy applications. This is the best.
Yeah, yeah. Excellent. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, Amy. And it's been wonderful to learn about cake pops, your opportunities, and daisy pops.
Good
And
one. Mhm.
yeah, no, thank you. It's been awesome.
All right, thank you, everybody. And so sorry again for being a minute late, but I appreciate your patience and thank you very much.